I think we can all agree that watering tomatoes is pretty easy. You just grab your hose and you run it over your tomatoes, right? Well, not necessarily. There's actually a technique to watering tomatoes if you want them to produce like crazy. So in today's episode, I am going to show you exactly how I water my tomato plants to get these types of results. That's right, an indeterminate tomato on its first year growing in Zone 6B. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome to my channel. I'm a lifelong tomato grower and I am obsessed with all things tomatoes. Now, when it comes to watering tomatoes, they are very simple. They need water, they need nutrients, and they need air. If you do those three things, your tomatoes will grow like crazy. However, if you do any one of these things wrong, you may notice that your tomatoes don't do so well, or maybe not at all. And honestly, this is something that took me years to learn, but once I figured it out, I got hooked. Now, before we get into it, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you know when we release new videos every week. Now, let's get to it. One of the first things you need to understand about watering tomatoes is frequency. How often should you be watering your tomatoes? The simple answer is whenever the soil is dry. But what does that mean? Is the soil dry to the touch? Is it dry 2 inches down? How can you possibly tell if the soil is dry? Now, this is where things get a little complicated, because it really depends on what type of growing situation you're dealing with. If you're growing in containers like I am here, you'll find that your containers dry out much faster than in-ground plants. And containers obviously are more susceptible to drying out because they have less mass, less heat capacity, and they lose moisture through the drainage holes. And depending on the weather, container plants may need watering every day. Yes, I said every day, whereas in-ground plants could go for several days or even a week between waterings. So it's really important to pay attention to your plants and feel the soil to see if it's dry. This is by far the best way to determine if your plant needs water. Stick your finger in the soil. If it feels dry, then it's time to water. But how far down should you stick your finger? Well, that's another great question. It all depends on your plant. Tomato plants have different root systems. Some varieties are more vigorous than others. For example, this is a beefsteak tomato. It's an heirloom variety. It's been growing all season long. It's had plenty of time to develop a large root system, whereas this is a brand new transplant that has only been in the ground for a couple of weeks. The roots haven't had time to grow yet, so for this plant, you only need to stick your finger in a couple of inches. Whereas for this plant, you may want to stick your finger down as far as 8 to 10 inches. So it really all depends on the size of the root system. Just use your best judgment. Now, some people like to use moisture meters to help determine if their plant needs water. Personally, I don't trust them completely. You may find that your meter tells you that your soil is dry, but it's not dry. Maybe you just need to move it to a different part of the plant. So again, your best bet is still to stick your finger in the soil. Now, once you determine that your plant needs water, how much water should you give it? Well, that all depends on a few factors. Obviously, a container plant is going to need less water than an in-ground plant, and obviously a larger plant is going to need more water than a smaller plant. So again, it really just depends. However, I will say that deep waterings are always better than frequent shallow waterings. For container-grown tomatoes, I try to give mine about a gallon of water every day. However, sometimes they need more, sometimes they need less. It all depends on the weather. On hot, windy days, they're gonna need more. When it's cooler and rainier, they're gonna need less. Now, if you're growing in the ground, you'll need to give your plants much more water, potentially several gallons per day. The best thing to do is to simply dig a hole around your plant, maybe 12 to 18 inches out from the trunk. Feel how far down the soil is dry and then give it water accordingly. This leads me to my next point, which is the single most important tip in this video. Please do not water over the top of your plants. Water at the base of your plant, either in the container or in the ground. Watering over the top of your plants can lead to disease and pests, especially fungal diseases like blight. And it also wastes water because a lot of it is going to run off instead of being absorbed by the plant. Now, you may be wondering, why do I see all these tomato growers watering their plants from overhead? And that's a great question. There's two reasons. No, one, they're growing in a greenhouse. A greenhouse is a closed environment, so the water is more likely to be absorbed by the plant and less likely to run off. And no, two, they're using a drip system like this. Drip emitters basically water at the base of each leaf, so the water is almost guaranteed to be absorbed and it's much less likely to cause problems. So if you're going to water over the top of your plants, please make sure to use a drip system like this. Now that brings us to our next point, which is mulching. Should you mulch around your tomatoes? The simple answer is yes. Mulching helps retain moisture in the soil, which means you won't have to water quite as often. It also helps regulate temperature, both high and low, and it helps prevent weeds. Now, you may be wondering, should I use wood chips? The answer is no. Wood chips suck all the nitrogen out of the soil, and it takes a long time for them to break down, so it's best to avoid them altogether. In fact, I would never use wood chips around anything edible. Instead, I recommend using something like straw or leaves or even grass clippings. All of these things break down much faster and they won't rob nitrogen from the soil. Now, personally, I like to use straw. It's really easy to find, it's cheap, and it breaks down relatively fast. Plus, it looks good. So now you know how often to water your tomatoes and how much water to give them. But what about when is the best time of day to water your tomatoes? And the simple answer is early in the morning. This gives your plants time to absorb the water before the heat of the day. If you water in the evening, your plants may not absorb the water as quickly and it could sit on the plant or in the soil overnight. This can lead to problems, especially if the temperatures drop at night. The last thing you need to know about watering tomatoes is about fertilizing. Should you fertilize when you water? The answer is no. Fertilizers burn when they're applied to dry soil. If you fertilize dry soil, you're essentially baking the fertilizer onto your plant. This can lead to damage and even death. Instead, it's best to mix your fertilizer into the water before you apply it to your plant. That way it's in solution and will be less likely to burn. Personally, I like to use a foliar spray like this. It's super easy to make and it works great. I'll link to the video below if you'd like to check it out. So there you have it. Now you know exactly how I water my tomatoes. Remember, water whenever the soil is dry. Give it a deep watering and water at the base of the plant. If you follow these simple tips, I guarantee that your tomatoes will grow like crazy. That's it for this episode, but please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you know when we release new videos every week. Also, please make sure to join our community of tomato lovers. We'd love to have you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.